hopefully you would have seen that inclusio. You'd have been like, oh, wow, okay, it says, I am with you. Okay? So there's a method to this madness, and I know that it doesn't sound like a lot of fun whenever I first assigned it, but the more familiar you are with the book, the more likely you're going to start to find these structures. Okay? So that's why we're looking at both examples. Does that make sense? Okay. But I don't like to say it's hidden. It just takes more persistence to find it. Because it's not hidden. It's right there in front of us, right? But we just have to be very intentional in looking for it. Yes, sir?
You just used the word, though, that most poets, many of them, want their poetry to be, the meaning to be hidden.
Correct. Poetry can very much be that way. You're right. Poetry has a tendency of being more likely to have a lot of depth in a short amount of space. And so poets have a tendency of doing it that way. Prose usually isn't quite as hidden or quite as difficult to find. I don't know how to put that. It is different. Poetry and prose is different, and yet they operate the same way. Okay? Other comments or questions on inclusio? Okay, so you'll be able to find inclusios. Sometimes an inclusio will be a single passage, like in the book of Matthew. You may find one that starts here and ends here, and so that's an inclusio just for that particular passage. Or you might find an inclusio like we did in Matthew, where it's at the very beginning, at the very end. It does not have to be there. It's just a rhetorical structure that you might find. Does that make sense? Not every book in the Bible has an inclusio at the beginning and end. Okay? It's just the way Matthew happens to be structured. All right, let's look at the next one. This one's called a chiasm. So remember we did the AB a while ago? All right, we're going to look at this again, but this time instead of an AB structure, we're going to have an A. You can actually have it a couple of different ways. ABBA or ABCBA. And these are both very simplified versions of what you can find. Chiasm, C-H-I-A-S-M. Chiasm.
One more time.
C-H-I-A-S-M. Pronounced chiasm. So what you're going to be looking for in this particular case is you're going to look for the repetition of these elements, but they're going to be inverted. Okay? So AB was back and forth, interchange. This. That's not what happens in chiasm. Chiasm goes this, then back to this, or this, back to this, then back to that. Okay? A, B, B, A, or A, B, C, B, A. Once again, these are very simplified. If you get into a complex structure, A, B, C, D, E, then back it up, then you go forward, and then you back it up, and it can get very complicated in certain ones, but we're looking at the simplified version right now. Everyone look at Psalm 67. Let's look at Psalm 67. This is a chiasm. This one is set up in a chiastic manner, if that's a word. This one is a chiasm. Psalm 67, if you want to flip over to the book of Psalms, find Psalm 67. Okay? So I'm just going to read it for you, then we'll come back and look at it. May God be gracious to us and bless us and make his face to shine upon us. Is that... Sorry. This one, for whatever reason, stuck it in my... Okay, I think it's all there. I started reading it and I thought, oh, well, maybe I didn't put the whole psalm. I did. Okay. May God be gracious to us and bless us and make his face to shine upon us, that your way may be known upon earth, your saving power among all nations. Let the peoples praise you, O God. Let all the peoples praise you. Let the nations be glad and sing for joy, for you judge the peoples with equity and guide the nations upon earth. Let the peoples praise you, O God. Let all the peoples praise you. The earth has yielded its increase, God. Our God has blessed us. May God continue to bless us. Let all the ends of the earth revere him. Okay? This one is an A, B, C, B, A structure. So I'm going to first read to you the A part of it, okay? May God be gracious to us and bless us and make his face to shine upon us, that your way may be known upon earth, your saving power among all nations. The earth has yielded its increase, God, our God, has blessed us. May God continue to bless us. Let all the ends of the earth revere him. Those two segments are the A part of the poem. Now let me read the B to you, the two B's. Let the peoples praise you, O God. Let all the peoples praise you. Let the peoples praise you, O God. Let all the peoples praise you. Then letter C is in the middle. Let the nations be glad and sing for joy, for you judge the peoples with equity and guide the nations upon the earth. So, letters A, the thing that is the theme or the thing that is holding those together, is God's blessing is upon his people. The God's blessing that is upon his people is the cause for the nations knowing God is God's saving power and the nation's praise to God. Okay? So God's blessing upon the people is A. Because God has the blessing upon the people, the nations are knowing God's saving power and they praise God. That's B. And then you have letter C. It's at the very center. And it suggests that the primary concern of the psalm is the joyful worship of God among all the nations. Does that make sense? Okay. So a chiasm starts one place, goes to another place, goes to another place, and then it comes back up to an earlier theme. Does that make sense? Any questions about that one?
This particular one, for me, it showed up because of translation, it changed it.
The translation changed it?
The Bible that I'm using right now tonight it's hard to follow that because of the translation.
Okay, what translation do you have?
The New Believers.
New Believer. Okay. Once again, remember your translation and make sure you know where on that spectrum your translation falls. The further you get away from God, I lost. Huh? I've lost the word. No, there's the two translation kinds. Do what? Oh, we talked about this all those weeks. Yeah, so it's y'all are going to make me go back and look at my stuff. I can't believe I've completely lost what I'm trying to think here. If I could think of the first word. Formal equivalence and functional. Okay, there we have it. For the further you get away from the formal equivalence, the more trouble you're going to have finding some of these structures. Formal equivalence is a lot closer to the original language, right?
Because I've got the New Living Translation, and I can follow you.
You So the New Living Translation does not track.
No,
Okay.
it doesn't, I maybe missed it,
Okay. So when you're looking at yours, bring yours up here and let me read it. Carlton, bring me yours too, if you don't mind. Let me read them out loud and see what we're looking at here. This is what? New Living. Okay, may God be merciful and bless us. May his face smile with favor on us. May your ways be known throughout the earth, your saving power among people everywhere. May the nations praise you, O God. Yes, may all nations praise you. Let the whole world sing for joy because you govern the nations with justice and guide the people of the whole world. May the nations praise you, O God. Yes, may all the nations praise you. Then the earth will yield its harvest, and God our God will richly bless us. Yes, God will bless us, and people all over the world will fear him. Yeah, I'm tracking. Okay? You have the same thing going on here. You have God, may God be merciful to us and bless us. May your ways be known among the earth for us, and may the nations praise you. Which goes into B, let the whole world sing for joy because of what you're doing. Then you go into C. Oh, that you got this marked wrong. It's got B, the nations, and then C is let the whole world sing. Then you come back to B and then A. So this one's fine. All right, let me look at yours.
Pretty close.
Oh, pretty close. Okay. May God be merciful and bless you. May his face smile with favor on us. May your ways be known throughout the earth, your saving power among people everywhere. May the nations praise you, O God. Yes, may all the nations praise you. Let the whole world sing for joy because you govern the nations with justice and guide the people of the whole world. May the nations praise you, O God. Yes, may all the nations praise you. Then the earth will yield its harvest, and God, our God, will richly bless us. Yes, God will bless us, and people all over the world will fear him.
When they change the words in the translation, though, that gets you off.
I can see what you're saying, but the most important thing on this particular one is locating the letter C. Let the nations be glad. In your verse, or in yours, it says, let the whole world sing for joy. So there's where the difference is, I think. Instead of let the nations be glad, you have the whole world. So the translator chose to change the word nations to whole world. And that's where the breakdown is. That's what makes this one more difficult to follow, I think. But it's still there. Okay? Does that make sense, everyone? I know this can be somewhat abstract.
I think part of the problem is when you're reading one translation, and I'm trying to do something with my translation, and I keep looking for the words that you're using, and I miss
Right.
what I'm
Well, I hear what you're saying. But really, I know Carlton's, and yours, I think, is probably the same way. It's the word choice that your translator chose that makes it more difficult to locate it. Because verse 4 is letter C. Let the nations be glad and sing for joy, for you judge the peoples with equity and guide the nations upon earth. Instead of saying nations, Carlton said the whole world. And I think yours said the same thing. Oh, does it say nations? Okay. So that can cause a problem, which is why we have more than one translation open when we're doing a serious Bible study, right? You want to get one that you're comfortable with. You want to get one that's more formal equivalent. And then if you want to get one that's less formal equivalent, more functional equivalent, you can. But you want to be balancing all of these and go back to the formal equivalent. What I do a lot of times is whenever I'm doing something like this and I'm digging deep into something, there's a lot of times I go back and get my interlinear. And I look at it, I look at the interlinear that has either the Greek or the Hebrew to see what it says, the actual word, to see what happens there, and that helps a lot whenever I get into my deep Bible study. I don't expect y'all to have to do that.
But we do get misled a lot.
Do what?
We do get misled, I think, a lot.
I will say that I don't want to use the word misled. I will say that you may not always pick up on everything that is possibly there for you, especially if you're reading only one translation. Once again, this is not for devotional reading. This is not to bring to church, and that's what this is. If you're sitting down and saying, I've always really wanted to study this particular book of the Bible. If you're going to dig into that particular book, that's what we're talking about here, okay? So if you're in your discipleship and you're feeling led to really dig into a particular book, that's what we're looking at here. If you're reading it for devotional reasons, or reading the Bible in the year, or going to just a regular Bible study with other people, however you want to look at that, this is not what the expectation is. Okay? Did you have another question or comment?
When you're using the letter system like you're doing now,
Okay, when I use the letter system like this,
and you're in a poetry mode,
poetry,
the letters are used for something else because they're for rhyme schemes.
that is correct. In poetry, when you're teaching poetry to students, you are looking at the rhyme schemes. We can't do that in Scripture for one reason. They don't rhyme because they've been translated. There are poems in the Psalms that rhyme in Hebrew. And so there again, there's a problem. In fact, there's something absolutely amazing. I can't remember which psalm. Let me look at this real quick, because this is really cool, and I want us to take a second to look at it. I can't remember. I should remember this, but I don't. Okay, let's look at Psalm 119. Psalm 119, 119. This psalm, in my opinion, this psalm is quite possibly one of the most beautiful psalms in Hebrew. Okay? This psalm is an acrostic poem. Do y'all know what an acrostic is? What is an acrostic? One that what? There you go. Has a meaning for each letter. Gosh, I can't think of. Okay. I don't know if I can remember all the things. The word scuba is an acrostic. I don't remember what it stands for, though. Does anyone have Google real quick? What is scuba? Look it up, Marcia. Tell us what scuba. I can't remember what it means. I think the U is underwater.
Is that why this section has another name?
Just a second. Let's look at, make sure we know what an acrostic is, and then I'll try to answer your question. What does scuba stand for? Self.
Water breathing apparatus.
Thank you. Self-contained. I should have known that. Underwater breathing apparatus. Have two P's. How do you spell apparatus? A-T-U-S. Okay. This is an acrostic. I think it's got other words too, or meaning. But when we're looking at it as far as poetry goes, scuba is the word that we're used to, but it actually means something else. And so when you look at Psalm 119, this is an acrostic poem with each section that starts with the Hebrew alphabet. And it goes all the way through the Hebrew alphabet in order. So it starts with Aleph, and then it goes to, which one? Beit? Beth. That's Beit. But anyway, Aleph, Aleph, Beit, on down. And so it does that. So if we knew Hebrew, it would be the same as if we were to write a poem that went A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and each stanza starts with that letter. And so we would be able to see that immediately, wouldn't we? We'd be, oh, wow, that's so cool. Somebody's so smart. But we don't have that in English. I don't care what translation you're using. It would be virtually impossible for you to do this. Okay? So you can look at these segments, these sections, and each segment begins with the following letter. So, Leo, what was your question again? Some of your translations does your translation have it in there? Okay, so bring me your translation if you don't mind. Some of your translations do this for you. Mine actually does not. But in this one, yeah. So on Leo's, for example, from verse 1 through verse 8, that's the Aleph section. So it begins with the letter Aleph at the beginning of Psalm 119. When you get to verse 9, that's when it starts with the Beit or the B. Then 17 starts with the Gimel. Then 25 starts with the Daleth, okay? Each one of those, and so you can, in Hebrew, you can track this, and it's very easy to see. If you don't have one that's like this, telling you this, hopefully, if you look down, if you have footnotes in your Bible, hopefully they may say that for you to help understand that. But the writer, these people who are writing the scriptures, they were not stupid people. And sometimes I think that those of us living in the 21st century look back at ancients and think, oh, they were so dumb, or they're not as smart as we are, things like that. They were brilliant. They had just as much creativity as we have, and they were able to do all kinds of neat, fun things in the scripture that we don't pick up on just because we don't know the language. And so it's the same thing with when we start looking at some of these sections that we're looking at. It's harder for us to pick up on it even though it's still there. Okay, does that help? But you're right. If I were teaching you a English poetry, we would look at the rhyme scheme, but we would also look at what, Carlton? We also letter something else in poetry. Bum 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 bum. So we do it in both places, don't we? So it's not a stretch for us to add one more section.
Who's capitalized on this, though, and they know that the military, because look at you cannot have a conversation with somebody in the military when you start using
Yes.
all the letters stand.
In the military, they do use the letters in a different way than what we civilians do, don't they? Like foxtrot, right? Is that what you're talking about, Carlton? Yes. Yeah. So they spell out fox. I don't know what all of them are. Tom, can you help us with any of this? The letters that they use in the military. Alpha, Bravo, Charlie. Yeah. So you've got all those, and so they do. The reason they do that is they're giving coordinates, or they're saying something across the thing. C, D, E sound a lot the same, and then if you get some podunk person from Muleshoe, Texas that has a real thick draw, and you start saying, yeah, I need you to send one letter, B. Do you say B or D? B or D? Bravo. Okay, I got it, right? I think that's the reason they do that. I mean, that's... Okay. Because they had too many people from Muleshoe showing up and screwing everything up. On NCIS, they said it on NCIS. Hey, here's your fun piece of trivia. Talking about Muleshoe and being famous in TV shows. Which TV show was the main character's family from Muleshoe? Great TV show. It's a 30-minute sitcom. Barry Corbin played the dad. The actress that played Flo from Mel's Diner played the mom, I think. I know Barry Corbin was the dad. The main actress of the show's named after her, Reba. Do you ever watch the TV show Reba? I think it's in season 1. She talks about her parents are coming to Houston to see her from Muleshoe, Texas. True story. Her parents actually live in Lubbock, I think. No, they live in Muleshoe. Barbara Jean, the girl that married Reba's ex-husband, her parents are from Lubbock. They go to a wedding up there. Anyway, there you have it. World famous town. All right. Any other questions on chiasm? ABBA, ABCBA. It can, like I said, it can actually be much longer than that. You can have more letters, but what you're going to do is you're going to follow this pattern, and you're going to start here and then go here to here to here. You're eventually going to get to a middle spot. Then you're going to go in the reverse order back out. Okay. You see this more in poetry than you do in the longer books, but it can also be there. Okay. All right. We've got some time here. Let's look at the next one. Maybe we can get through both of these. The next one is called intercalation. 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 And so what you're actually doing with an intercalation is you have a literary unit going on over here, and then all of a sudden you plop down in the middle of that another literary unit, and then a little bit later you pick up the rest of the story. Have any of you, one of the most difficult, in my opinion, I'm not very smart, but where I see this the most is in the book series Game of Thrones. Has anyone read that? No. Don't read it. He didn't finish the book series. I don't think he'll ever finish it. I'm going to be mad whenever I get to the end of book 5 because he won't ever finish it. But anyway, the way that book is written, and this is what made it very difficult for me to understand it at first, each chapter is told from a different character's point of view. And so, like, if I was writing a book, I would say, okay, the chapter 1 is titled Loretta. And so then I start telling the story from Loretta's point of view. I get finished with chapter 1, and the next chapter is called Marcia. Well, I continue in the story with Marcia. Marcia's hanging out with Loretta, so I hear all this from Marcia's point of view, but I've also heard it from Loretta's point of view, and then chapter 3, all of a sudden, it's over here, and it's Nell. Nell hadn't been hanging out with these two. She's over there across town, and so I'm hearing a completely different story about Nell and her experience. That's the way Game of Thrones is written. You don't ever know which person you're going to hear their point of view, but the story continues to move forward in spite of the confusion, and so it makes it, in my opinion, made it more difficult to get into the story. Once you get used to the flow, it's an excellent story. That's kind of what an intercalation does. So you have this story going on over here, and the story's been going on, you're reading it, and it's all interesting, and you're like, wow, this is great. And then all of a sudden, boom, you have another story, and you're like, what is this? What does this have to do with what I've been reading about? Why is this even here? And so you read it, then you get to the end of that chapter, and then you pick up that story over there. And you're like, now hold on. The absolute best example of this is located in the book of Genesis, okay? If you look in the book of Genesis, there is this incredible story. Every one of you are familiar with this story. It begins in chapter 37 of Genesis. This is the story of Joseph and the many-colored coat. Okay? You start off reading about Joseph. Jacob settled in the land where his father had lived as an alien, the land of Canaan. This is the story of the family of Jacob. Number one main character, Joseph. Joseph, being 17 years old, was shepherding the flock with his brothers. He was a helper to the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought a bad report to them, of them, his brothers, to their father. Now Israel, also known as Jacob, loved Joseph more than any other of his other children because he was the son of his old age, and he had made him a long robe with sleeves or many colors. It's really almost impossible to translate what kind of robe this was. It was a special robe. That's all that matters. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all of his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. We have read the first 4 verses of this story. We now know this story is going to be about Joseph and his brothers who hate him, don't we? Is that what the rest of Genesis is about? No. I wish it were, but it's not. Actually, I don't wish it were because this is brilliant. Chapter 37 is about Joseph and his brothers. 38 is about what? Judah and Tamar. You read chapter 38, and then you get to 39, and what happens? We're back to Joseph. Most people would say, okay, that means chapter 40 is going to be about what? It should be about who? If we're doing the interchange, we're back to who? We're back to Judah and Tamar, right? But no, it's another one about Joseph. 41's about Joseph. 42's about Joseph. 43's about Joseph. 44's about Joseph. What the heck happened here? Why did we have this story about Judah and Tamar in the middle of a story about Joseph? It's because it's an intercalation. The intercalation does some very, very, very important things. When we get to the end of the story, do we, as the audience, as the reader, do we love Joseph at the end of the story? We love Joseph. Why do we love Joseph? What are some great qualities that Joseph has throughout this story? What he went through. He went through a horrible, horrible trauma. His brothers sold him into slavery and then told their dad that Joseph was killed by wild animals. Joseph remained what? He remained faithful to whom? To God through the entire thing. It didn't matter if he was languishing away in the prison in Pharaoh's in Pharaoh's basement, or whether he was in the pit that his brothers threw him in, or whatever. He remains faithful to God. When Joseph has an opportunity, he becomes the second most powerful man in the entire nation of Egypt, which was the most powerful nation on the planet. So basically, he became the vice president of the United States of America. And he had an opportunity to stick it to these brothers. What does he do? He forgives them, and he weeps. He weeps for his brothers, and he loves his brothers, and he wants to let them know how much he loves them. After they bring him in, he brings them in and does all these things. He tests them to see, are they going to treat Benjamin the way they treated me? He tests his brothers to see, are they good people? Have they learned their lesson from the way they treated me? He does all of these things. We get to the very end of Joseph's story, and we love Joseph because he is like the epitome of what it means to be a forgiving, loving person who loves God and remains faithful to God his entire life, regardless of what happens to him. So what is the point of the intercalation of chapter 38? What does that particular chapter do for the story of Joseph. Do y'all remember the story of Judah and Tamar? Let's look at this. Let's look at chapter 38. It happened at that time that Judah went down from his brothers and settled near a certain Adullamite whose name was Hira. There Judah saw the daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua. He married her and went into her. She conceived and bore a son, and he named him Again she conceived and bore a son whom he named Onan. Yet again she bore a son, and she named him Shelah. She was in Kazib when she bore him. Judah took a wife for his firstborn. Her name was Tamar. But Judah's firstborn, was a wicked man in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord put him to death. Then Judah said to Onan, go into your brother's wife and perform the duty of a brother-in-law to her. Raise up offspring for your brother. Let's stop right there. This was a common thing. If your older brother died without having bore children and you were not married, you were required to marry your older brother's wife. The firstborn son of that union was not your son. He was the son of your older brother. That's the law. I don't care about DNA. That's just the way it was. Continue with verse 9. But since Onan knew that the offspring would not be his, he spilled his semen on the ground whenever he went into his brother's wife, so that he would not give offspring to his brother. What he did was displeasing in the sight of the Lord, and he put him to death also. Then Judah said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, remain a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah grows up. For he feared that Judah feared that he too would die like his brother. So Tamar went to live in her father's house. In the course of time, the wife of Judah, Shua's daughter, died. When Judah's time of mourning was over, he went up to Timnah to his sheep shearers, he and his friend Hira the Adullamite. When Tamar was told, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep, she put off her widow's garments, put on a veil, wrapped herself up, and sat down at the entrance to Enaim, which is on the road to Timnah. She saw that Shelah was grown up, yet she had not been given to him in marriage. When Judah saw her, he thought her to be a prostitute, for she had covered her face. He went over to her at the roadside and said, come, let me come into you, for he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. She said, what will you give me that I may come in, that you may come in to me? He answered, I will send you a kid from the flock. She said, only if you give me a pledge until you send it. He said, what pledge shall I give you? She said, your signet ring, your cord, and the staff that's in your hand. So he gave them to her and went into her, and she conceived by him. Then she got up and went away, and taking off her veil, she put on the garments of her widowhood. When Judah sent the kid by his friend, the Adullamite, to recover the pledge from the woman, he couldn't find her. He asked the townspeople, where is the temple prostitute who was in Aim by the wayside? But they said, no prostitute's been here. So he returned to Judah and said, I have not found her. Moreover, the townspeople said, no prostitute has been here. Judah replied, let her keep the things as her own, otherwise we will be laughed at. You see, I sent his kid and we couldn't find her. 3 months later, Judah was told, your daughter-in-law Tamar has played the whore. Moreover, she is pregnant as a result of whoredom. And Judah said, well, bring her out and let her be burned. As she was being brought out, she sent word to her father-in-law, it was the owner of these who made me pregnant. And she said, take note whose these are, the signet, the cord, and the staff. Then Judah acknowledged him and said, she is more right than I, since I did not give her my son Shelah. And he did not lie with her again. What does this story highlight to the reader? Do what? Not that you don't break your promises. We're going to go back to Joseph in a minute. We all love Joseph because of what? He's faithful to God. He's a forgiving man. He continues to do the will of God even in the midst of all the strife he's been through. What does this highlight to us, the reader, about Judah? He does not follow the one true God the same way Joseph does. Not only that, his children are wicked people. This story is held up to us, the reader, so we can see how horrible the other sons of Jacob are. Joseph becomes even a more loved person when we see him from the point of view of how rotten his brothers are. Judah is the one who gets highlighted, but he represents all the other brothers because they're all this horrible. These people are horrible people, and Joseph is the star shining out here. That's the point of the intercalation that we see here in the book of Genesis. It's a reference, it contrasts between Joseph and his brothers. That's why that story is located where it is. Does that make sense to everyone? So even though we may see this sort of thing and think, well, I don't know what this is here, I'm just going to skip that story, we do so at our own peril. Any questions about intercalation? What the point of it is? All right. Everybody's good? I've got a couple of minutes after 8. Any questions at all? Okay. This can get very complicated. Do not allow yourself to get bogged down in the complication. Do the best you can, learn and grow from it, and do the best you can. But it's not like you're going to be cast out into the darkness without clothes on if you don't get it, right? We're here to stretch ourselves. Any questions? Everybody good? No questions at all? Okay, we will pick up next week with raising interpretive questions. Y'all have an excellent evening, and I hope you all get wet.